Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, hi, and welcome to inFocus. We thank you for joining us for our broadcast here tonight on TV30 every Monday night as we gather live at 7 o'clock here to talk about the issues impacting us in our community, in our state, religion, etc. First of all, before we get underway, just want to give a special thank you to each who participated in our recent Days of Praise Share-a-thon. Last Thursday and Friday, had some technical issues going on with the radio last Friday evening where we lost power to our transmitter site. But we're so grateful for many of you who participated, and although the Share-a-thon is over, certainly the need is not. So the Share-a-thon is a time of presenting the need, but thanks to each who have called in and to those who will continue to send in support here to VCY Ministries over the next 4 months, so greatly appreciated. Tonight is our monthly legislative update. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that there are some Republican legislators who are seeking to legalize medical marijuana in our state? Did you know that there are another piece of legislation would decriminalize marijuana, the penalties in our state? Are you aware that there are also legislations, bills that have been introduced to bring about doctor-assisted suicide in our state, medical aid in dying, it's being called? And are you aware of efforts that are being made to adopt gender-neutral terminology all throughout our state statutes? This and so much more we'll be talking about in inFocus tonight. It's our privilege to have back Julaine Appling, President of Wisconsin Family Council. Julaine, good evening.
Good to be back.
So much going on?
Well, there is a lot going on, and we're up, but the New Year's only, what, 15 days old or something
15 days old,
like
and
that?
Happy New Year, yes.
Right.
It's amazing. Yes, we're halfway through the first month of the year already.
What we're doing actually is winding down a legislative session.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for our viewers, Jim, we run in 2-year legislative cycles here. The cycle begins, the legislative session begins in early January of even-numbered years and ends in December 31st of I got that backwards. Begins in odd-numbered years after the even-numbered year election. So we run it in 2 years. So we had all of 2023 was part of our session, 1 year of it. And now we're in that last year. And it'll be done by late February, middle of March is what we're hearing. So we are in the mad dash, crazy season in the state capitol right now.
Well, when you said that, I looked since the last time you were on inFocus, there have been over 420 pieces of legislation that have been introduced into Madison, the Senate, the Assembly. It's like, how can any legislator even fathom getting a hold of what this legislation is all about?
No, they can't. But everybody wants to run on something, because what are we in right now? We're in an election year, a major election year. So they want to walk away and say, oh, I authored this. It didn't get a hearing, didn't get a vote, but I authored it. And so they can talk about intention and supposedly help them get reelected. So that's what we're seeing a lot of, but some of the bills are coming out and they're being fast-tracked. They're being introduced one day, 2 days later, they're having a hearing on them, which means they'll be on the floor very, very quickly.
Right, right. And I understand the Assembly's on the floor tomorrow.
They are. They're on the floor tomorrow. And it's my understanding they might be on the floor. What's tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, or at least a couple days a week until they get everything wrapped up. The Senate usually is a little bit behind the Assembly. They let the Assembly take the lead on a lot of things, and then they come in and do cleanup. So I expect that that's the pattern that we're going to see. So, but by the middle of March, I think we'll be all done over with new legislation and formal floor periods. We have a full-time legislature. They never are really off the job, but they wrap up their floor periods and things like that in these 2-year cycles, and about halfway through a third of the way through the second year they wrap it up.
As we get underway tonight at 7 o'clock, at this very same moment in the state of Iowa, they have begun their caucusing for the eyes of the nation on Iowa, what's going to transpire there at this time, and it just helps us understand the presidential campaign season. I mean, and the primaries, caucuses are now underway.
Well, they are, and look, the nation has been gearing up for January 15th with the caucuses in Iowa being the first in the nation as a bellwether on how this goes. You know, and there's people that say, are trying to say so-and-so's going to win and it's a runaway, and then there's other, we don't know. We'll have to see how this shakes out.
This is one state.
One state. And it's not even a primary. It's a caucus. It's a partisan caucus. And then we have New Hampshire. But here's the beauty of all this, and when I talk about legislation, and this isn't one we planned on, but I'm going to interject it. So we have this beautiful thing called an electoral college. And right now, we have, each state is actually conducting its own presidential election under our current way we do things with the Electoral College. And they have to earn, was it 228 electoral votes or 280? I think it's 280. They got to earn those throughout all the states. Did you know we had a bill introduced? This is not the first time, but this is at least the second time that would take our popular vote in Wisconsin, and rather than give the votes to the person who won, the presidential candidate who wins our popular vote, it would go to the person who wins a national popular vote. It's a national popular vote movement, and they're looking for enough states with enough electoral votes to get to that magic number. That bill's been introduced here.
And it has been passed in several states already.
It sure has. So, yeah, tonight's kickoff for all this fun that will culminate in now, 11 months? Not quite 11 months, a little over 10, actually. So it's time for all of us to pay attention. Elections matter. They have very real consequences, and we, the people, have a say. Beauty of a republic. Beauty of a republic.
So it would be 270 electoral votes they're
Is
looking
it
for the
270?
winner.
I'm doing the math, and I'm all over. Thank you.
Well, you know, the people we elect really are reflective of the population as a whole. And I've got to show a photo here because I say this to point out the new president of one of Pennsylvania's largest school districts, the Central Bucks School District, sworn into office last month with her hand not on the Bible, but on sexually explicit LGBT propaganda and banned books. She indicated, quote, "The Bible doesn't hold significant meaning to me." So, Julaine, instead, she's taking her oath on graphic, sexually explicit books.
Yeah, this is a kind of a stunning move. You know, every once in a while in Wisconsin, we'll have somebody that will not swear on the Bible, you know, or their hand on the Bible, or we'll have them say they won't uphold a certain section of the or a part of the state of Wisconsin Constitution. That happened during the marriage amendment. I've never seen anything this blatant, where they take sexually explicit material and a school board member has the unmitigated audacity to say, this is what I believe is important. Especially at a time when parents are much more sensitized to the kinds of books that their children are being subjected to, and they're much more readily stepping into this and weighing in on it. And here's a school board member who apparently, Jim, feels so secure that this would be possible and would not have horrible repercussions. Frankly, you talk about recalling someone, this is someone who, in my opinion, would be subject to a recall. Now, we're one of the few states that you can recall an elected official for any reason or no reason. Most states you have to have cause to recall. But this is an in-your-face move to the people who have their children in that school district.
Indeed. Well, that reminds us that we have a primary coming up, and there are going to be school board races on this primary for the state of Wisconsin. The key date we're looking at here is February 20th.
Well, we have a big, like we talked about it earlier, big election year. Our first election is February 20th, the primary for the spring elections, which happen the first Tuesday in April. And then, of course, we move to August with the primary for the fall election with the November general election. So the elections that we're talking about right now in February are for our local offices. We don't have any statewide race on the ballot this year. There's no Supreme Court race, no state superintendent of public instruction, nothing. But these are so important. The level of government that most impacts our lives is local. So this is school board, this is city council, village and town boards. Might have a couple of places where you have some county board supervisors being elected.
Milwaukee County it is.
Yeah, mayors. You might have mayors. You might have city executives, depending on the structure. Certainly municipal judges, appellate judges, district court judges. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about. So people need to be aware that they need to check out myvote.wi.gov, not right now, but soon. Everyone who's going to have a primary race will be on that myvote.wi.gov, and they will be able to see. If it comes up clean, you can go, I don't have anything I have to do on February 20th related to voting. But if there's races on there, then you need to find out who those candidates are and what the issues are and be prepared to vote.
Right. Again, that's February 20th, the Wisconsin State primary election, and that again is going to cover those local races. We have to wait, though, for the presidential preference primary until the April, I think it's April 2nd, that first Tuesday in April. Julaine, there has been a lot of talk about Wisconsin Elections Commission, all that's going on here, and this of significance here. Here's a headline from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel: effort to remove Wolf blocked. This was a decision made late last week by a judge indicating that Republican lawmakers, you don't have the authority to remove the state's top election official, Megan Wolf.
Well, and that is where they came down. And so Megan Wolf has been embroiled in controversy since 2020. And there have been multiple attempts by various people and entities to try to, at a minimum, slap her hands for some of the things that she allowed to go on.
And her term is expired.
And her term is expired. This is a power play, and you can see it developing. The people involved are about who's going to be able to make the final determination. And I think you're going to refer to an article where Evers has said very blatantly, I will not allow Wisconsin Elections Commission to be reconstructed, dismantled and reconstructed. Well, that's part of it. Megan Wolf and her position within that. This has been so embroiled in controversy. Jim, for our viewers, though, this isn't the first time that the entity that's responsible for conducting our state elections has been a problem. You'll remember the Government Accountability Board. Mm-hmm. The joke there was it was a government no accountability board. So we reconstructed it and put new people in and called it the Wisconsin Elections Board. I can't remember what it was before that, but it was embroiled in controversy. It is one of those areas in our state government where it just stays that way. Part of it is the nature, I guess, of dealing so much with elections and making people unhappy. But Megan Wolf has, until somebody, I guess, goes in and bodily removes her, Isn't
the legislature the authority over this commission?
But that's the whole heart of the controversy. Are they? As I read the information that I see, the controversy is, do they have the authority to demand? I think so, because they should have full authority. Evers doesn't think they do. He's saying, over my dead body, basically, I'm not going to dismantle.
Well, they created this agency. The legislature created it.
The state legislature created it. They had some say in who, if I remember correctly, there was some legislative appointments as well as gubernatorial appointments, and the composition of the board. And that's changed a little bit over the last few years. But I think for everybody who's listening and watching today, I think what we need to know is that at this point, we don't have a silver bullet for fixing all of this with the Wisconsin Elections Commission. We have all this map stuff going on, and they're right in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be a major player in these elections. And it looks to me like Megan Wolf's going to be there unless they find some way to say, no, your term is done. We didn't reappoint you, which is true. They didn't. And you are no longer here. I hate to think about how ugly this could get.
Yeah.
I don't want to see us get to the point where we're truly locking the door and saying you can't come in, you don't have a password.
But it appears that there's no authority for her to be in this position any longer.
There's not right now. So we'll have to see what the next step is.
Very interesting. Well, we'll see what, no doubt it's going to be appealed from this Dane County Circuit Court to another level of court.
Yes, of course. Well, I assume it will be. So let's say it gets appealed. I wish I could tell you it was going to a conservative appellate court, but it's not. Mm-hmm. I think that's District 1 appellate court, and it's not conservative. And so let's say that the appellate court takes it, and then they get a good decision, and they say you're out. Well, then they appeal to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court. I don't see any way there that they agree that she's no longer there. This is like borderline lawless.
Yeah, it is. This is not a lifetime appointment. No,
it is not. And they really, perhaps what they need to do, and I will readily say I'm not an attorney, and I don't look at those things always that way, but perhaps what needs to change is a clear statute from the legislature clarifying how that chain of command goes and who has authority. rather than keep tossing it to
I laugh because if they pass it, the governor's going to veto it.
Veto it.
Right,
I know.
right.
I know. And he would. But he has no interest in changing this, especially going into the 2024 election.
Right. Well, you mentioned it, the legislative maps, and here again is a headline from the Journal Sentinel. High Court has 7 sets of new maps to consider. 7 sets?
Well, I'm laughing because that's just ridiculous. It's been a battle on these maps since 2021.
Again, who's got the authority for this?
Okay, now I'm going to tell you my understanding of the law. The people who earn the right to have the majorities in our state legislature, in our assembly and our Senate, according to the way the law is written, that's one of the spoils of victory, is being able to redraw the maps every 10 years because our U.S. Constitution requires that census, which then dictates that we review our legislative maps. So just to clarify, the congressional maps are not in question, those 8 districts where we have 8 congressmen. But our state assembly and Senate maps are. Theoretically, because the Republicans are in strong majorities in both the Senate and the assembly, they should be able to draw the maps. They did draw them. If you remember what happened in 2022, the state Supreme Court nixed them. Then they went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and what the state Supreme Court had said they were going to accept, the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, you're not. So they came back, and then the court was forced, but they accepted what the Republicans had submitted. And we're right back here because of the lawsuit that was filed days after Janet Protasewicz was seated on the high court because she won that election in April. So they gave them until January 12th after the court said, number one, we're going to accept the case. Number two, now we've decided the case, and all these maps are unconstitutional because they have too many areas where the districts are not contiguous. Okay, so the Republicans have submitted a map. The governors submitted a map. I don't know who all submitted a map, but the thing that made me smile probably the most during all this is the court said, "Oh, just in case the legislature and the governor can't agree on a set of maps, we'll draw our own." And be ready with that. And then they went and hired 2 consultants at $100,000 apiece to examine all the maps and say what they think about them. And so this is a court, in my opinion, I use this phrase for it. This is a fox guarding the hen house.
Right.
So what we have is right now a mess. The WEC, Wisconsin Elections Commission, has said all along. One of the smarter things they've probably said is, we have to have any maps that if you're going to change them, they've got to be done by March 15th. That is realistic, because if you're going to have those maps in place, you've got people who are getting ready to run or not run, and they don't even know what district they're in. And they have to declare, get all their signatures in and everything by June, very early in June. It's like June, first Monday in June. They have to have all that done because we have a primary in August and our general again in November. So there's a lot of limbo here. I think watching what will happen with this before the court, they're going to look at 7 maps and listen to 2, quote, independent consultants to make a decision. Yeah. And meanwhile, Robin Vos has said, we're going to fight this to the U.S. Supreme Court because he thinks there's federal issues that have arisen as a result of this
didn't
lawsuit.
the U.S. Supreme Court then already uphold the maps that we presently have?
They did. They did. Well, I shouldn't say they upheld them. They sent back what the U.S. Supreme Court said was the maps that had been accepted originally were not acceptable according to federal law and the way they were done. So they went back to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court accepted what the Republicans had given them. Remember, the big deal on that was the least amount of change. That was supposedly their criteria. So theoretically, what the Republicans gave them was the least amount of change. It's my understanding that what the Republicans have given them now has taken care of these little islands that were created that were considered not contiguous, these municipal islands, and they've just gone in and said, okay, this is what you said. This is why you rejected them. So we're going to fix that and leave everything else alone. So we'll see what happens. My prediction, they'll accept the maps from the governor.
Well, that's kind of interesting because it looks like the governor's been playing politics with this too.
Oh, you think?
And trying to put in like Tyler August and Robin Voss in the same district or something of that nature. I mean, a lot of shenanigans going on.
Well, and that I read a correction on that. They did, but they pitted a lot of Republicans against other Republicans.
Okay.
Apparently, John Jagler is pitted against Senator Joan Ballweg, and Tyler August, who is the majority leader for the state assembly. He is pitted against Amanda Nedwiski, who is also a Republican. And they think they just missed the fact that Tyler August had moved, had the wrong address in.
Yeah.
So they were really trying to put Tyler August against Robin Voss as the speaker. So I read an article, I'm sure you did too, that Governor Evers said from the outset, these are nonpartisan, these are fair.
Yeah.
They were drawn with all these considerations to make sure they were just the best maps. And it's so political, so political.
Julaine Appling with us here tonight on inFocus with a legislative update. There's much going on in our state. And Julaine, there's another issue that went before the Wisconsin Supreme Court on fast track, and that was to try and do away with our voucher program here in the state.
Yeah, let's just talk real briefly about these, what they call original action petitions. Original action petitions are lawsuits that get filed directly to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, skipping district court, skipping the appellate court. And the reason they file those is that they think they impact so many people, that there's so much urgency and the issue is so important. They can't fool around down here with the fact-finding courts and the appellate court, the correcting court. They have to go directly to the Supreme Court. So in October, the Minocqua Brewing Company, Super PAC, filed a lawsuit directly to the Supreme Court, original action petition, saying that our school voucher program, the parental choice programs, we have Racine, Milwaukee, and the statewide one, are all unconstitutional. And essentially their argument was the money that is being spent on that is being taken away from the students in the public school, and therefore they are getting an inferior education. That's essentially their argument. So the Supreme Court has sole discretion on whether they accept an original action petition. They have to have 4 votes to accept it. And in a unanimous opinion, just like the Thursday or so before Christmas, the Supreme Court, without comment, said, we aren't accepting this one. Now, in between when the case was filed in October and when the court handed down that decision in December, Robin Voss and Tony Evers, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and a whole bunch of other people filed briefs with the state Supreme Court. And in the instance of Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, Governor Evers and Robin Voss, they all said to the court, don't take it. Don't take this case. There's too many facts that are not agreed upon. And remember, the state Supreme Court's not a fact-finding court. So they have to have pretty much agreement on the facts going into that, to that court. So if they want to do this now, if Minocqua Brewing Company or whoever wants to do this, they got to start right back at the district court and build that case. And the thing I see it as a win, Jim, for education freedom. I really do. Because what that lawsuit wanted was to dismantle that whole voucher program and independent charter schools.
Instantaneously, almost.
Yeah, for the next school year. And that's one thing the governor pointed out, Robin Voss pointed out, Will pointed out. You are about to throw tens of thousands of students and their families into utter chaos.
Right.
You're going to have school districts that don't know what to do with the influx of students in the public schools. You're going to have families that are just absolutely beside themselves because of what's happened. And here you have, for the first time ever, I think, on any issue that I can think of, Governor Evers and Robin Voss on the same page. And then Will, of course, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty weighing in on it. So we've got a reprieve, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll come back. But you know, it's a lot cheaper if you can skip the district court and the appellate court, go to the state Supreme Court directly. You start down here with the fact-finding court, district court, very expensive.
Right.
Very time-consuming.
And this, no doubt, too, would go before the U.S. Supreme Court as well.
Likely. I mean, originally, remember, years and years, we have the oldest school choice program, voucher program in the country. Annette Polly Williams was a Democrat, wanted it for Milwaukee in particular, so we had the Milwaukee one. And the question arose, would religious private schools qualify for that? That ended up in, yes, they do qualify.
She was on this program decades ago,
I bet she was.
fighting that issue and dealing with that matter.
She was Fascinating lady, she really was.
Julaine, this is something that has come up here too, the Parental Bill of Rights. And I know this was not on our docket here tonight, but this is something I understand just passed out of the Assembly Committee last week. And this allows parents like the right to determine names and pronouns for the child will utilize at school, and just lays out verbatim many rights of parents. And I didn't realize this, but and you likely do, there is a transgender parent and non-binary advocacy caucus in Madison, Wisconsin. And they condemned this legislation. Representative Melissa Ratcliffe said this bill is not about rights but about wrongs that the Republicans want to inflict on our state and our students, especially transgender students. Restricting a student's right to be called by their preferred name and pronouns is deplorable and reprehensible.
Well, here we go with this inflamed rhetoric again from people who don't understand that what this bill is trying to do is to bring some common sense and some protections. And this is the second time that the bill's been introduced. It was introduced and passed last time, and the governor vetoed it. Mm-hmm. It enumerates rights that in a perfect world, actually not even a perfect world, in a world of just 10 to 15 years ago, nobody would have ever thought of this bill, Jim, because they would have said, well, of course parents have the right to determine all these things, the education, the religion, the use of pronouns, medical procedures, whatever it is. Parents have that right. But that's not where we live today. Schools in particular have been usurping parental rights. The state will usurp parental rights anytime it can. And so this bill came out both times enumerating these specific rights. But the beauty of this bill really is at some point in there it says, and oh, by the way, there are other inalienable rights that parents have that are not enumerated in this bill. And the fact that they are not enumerated does not dismiss them. Because, but these are, I think there's 14 to 16 rights that are laid out in that bill. And I think it will pass in the Senate. I think it'll go to the governor again. I fully expect him to veto it. And I expect him to veto it because his worldview would demand it. We legislate out of a worldview. Yeah. We govern out of a worldview. And our governor's worldview is not in sync with a biblical worldview.
Right. No.
And so he doesn't respect the right of a parent to make those kinds of decisions. That's not how he views this.
No.
Children are wards of the state.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's his view. And I mean, his view flies the LGBT progress flag, a pride flag above the state capitol as well.
You got to give him kudos. He's consistent with his worldview.
He is. Julaine, let's hit some current issues that are going on right now. We know one of which is that there is an effort on the part of some Republicans to legalize medical marijuana. What are they attempting to do? And it seems that they're seeking to put the state in the marijuana business.
This whole concept is mind-boggling to me. We've seen it coming. Every session for the last maybe 3 sessions, the Republicans have moved closer and closer to doing something to decriminalize marijuana or to legalize it. Every session they've gotten a little warmer towards it. Mm-hmm. I think this is a political move. I think this is, in an election year, an effort to try to find those independent voters. And by the way, we're a targeted state for our our U.S. Senate race and for the presidential race. So why are we targeted? Because we're purple. What makes us purple is that small sliver of independents who some cycles go red, some cycles go blue. And so I think that's what's at work here. But we haven't seen the actual language. We understand that Pat Snyder is the author of it from up in Wausau. But we know that supposedly, according to Robin Voss, when he did the press conferences around the state, it is the most restrictive of any states. So there would be 5 dispensaries that could do this, dispense the medical marijuana. It wouldn't be, they say it wouldn't be smoking. It could be edibles and oils that would be used. We've tried to do the research to see what's the difference? There isn't any difference. The concentration of THC in the edibles or the oils is still huge. It's very, very, very much more concentrated now than it was even 10 years ago. But the dispensaries, this is what gets me. Why do we want the state of Wisconsin, through the Department of Health Services, dispensing medical marijuana or marijuana for any reason? Mary Felskowski, Senator Mary Felskowski, a Republican, she would very much like to see medical marijuana legalized. She opposes the bill because she thinks that the private sector has been cut out of it. So she's looking at it from a free market position. I would look at it like that too, but and I do think it's wrong that the private sector. But more than that, why do we want the state involved with this? Now, part of what makes this narrow is that they've said very distinctly what diseases and illnesses can be treated with it. But as I looked at that list, there were some things in there I thought, wow, there's still some room in there for medical personnel to have quite some leniency in how they viewed that, like persistent nausea or something like that. I don't know.
My view is the camel's nose would be in the tent.
Well, of course it would be.
And whatever stipulations they put on right now, it is only for the present, because we know in the next legislative session it'll be to expand.
Well, of course it will, and we've seen that in every state where they started with medical and then eventually got to recreational.
Right.
But the thing, I think, one thing that we need to remember is many of these diseases. Cancer was the first on their list. Okay. Many people who are being treated for cancer today that might take that THC, they're out on the roads. Are they not susceptible to the effects of marijuana when they're behind the wheel, even though they're taking it for, quote, medicinal purposes? States are reeling from some of the traffic-related problems that are coming from marijuana, whether it's being used for medical purposes or whether it's being used for recreational.
Well,
slippery slope.
So we see coupled with that is this bill, Assembly Bill 861, coming from a different set of actors, though. And this is one that would really reduce the penalties for possession or use of marijuana.
This is what they've been after. This is what they've been trying to do, because this would be recreational as well. So they've been trying to decriminalize it. Their argument always, Jim, is, and by the way, this has bipartisan support. Representative Shea Sortwell is the lone Republican on the bill. The rest of those are Democrats. But what their argument is Milwaukee, if you get stopped for marijuana, it's a $1 charge. And I think Dane County's the same. And they say, well, we got to equalize that. That's the attempt in a bill like this, is to, quote, equalize the penalty for possession.
Well, they also use the excuse that Wisconsin is an island in this regard. You have to look to our neighbors around us, and they all allow for it, so we must do it too. I mean, if somebody's going to jump off a bridge, let's all go jump off the bridge.
I've used that example many times in the state legislature, where, just because other states have enacted a bad idea doesn't mean we have to follow suit. But that's an argument that makes them feel like, oh yeah, we need to get on board because people, and what they're couching in monetary terms. Well, they're going to Minnesota, they're going to Illinois, they're going to Iowa, they're going wherever they have to go to get the marijuana, and they're getting the money.
And we're missing out on the tax dollars. We're missing out on
all this money. So this is a poor way, in my opinion, to try to garner money for the state coffers. Very, very ill-advised. Whether it's Assembly Bill 861 or whatever the bill number will be for the bill that would legalize medical marijuana.
Julaine Appling is with us here tonight on inFocus with the legislative update. We are going to take a look at a few pieces of legislation that have been introduced since our last program and on various matters, our last legislative update, and just some of the significance of some of these bills. Keep in mind, over 420 bills have been introduced since our last program in December, and they are coming fast and furious right now. The first set we're going to be talking about are dealing with life-related issues, and I've got a companion set of bills, Assembly Bill 776 and Senate Bill number 732, that would actually bring about public funding for pregnancy counseling organizations.
Well, yes.
Or, I mean, it's dealing with the issue of public funding.
It's dealing with it, and it's saying they don't get any money.
Right.
Because they won't counsel in favor of abortion.
Right.
So this is a direct response to one of the bills in the Embrace Them Both package of 4 bills. That was a package of bills that defined abortion, the one of them. Second one increased the tax deduction for dependents and said that if a fetal heartbeat was detected for an unborn baby, that baby could count as a dependent for tax purposes. And the third one was to provide a $1 million grant per year to Choose Life Wisconsin, which is the entity that collects the money from the state for the sale of the Choose Life plates. And that money then, that $1 million then would go to pregnancy care centers all across the state who would apply for it through a grant process to help them be more effective and to help them help more women who present and men who present with crisis pregnancies. And that's what it was. That's what this bill is about. It's saying, no, pregnancy care centers are the best ground game we have in the pro-life movement because they're the ones that people go to. They open their door, they step through, they're met with compassion and help, material things that they need. They're counseled the full panoply of options. They don't counsel in favor of abortion or refer for abortion. And they tell them what abortion is and how it works, but they also push adoption and other things. And the liberals hate it. They hate these organizations. They have tried for years, Jim, to say they lie, that they have to, their signs have to include, we don't refer for abortion or other things. From California to Wisconsin, this has happened. So this is one of those bills, very clearly is a shot across the bow. Let's say the legislative maps come back and they get approved and they favor Democrats. So in 2024, in November, when we elect all 99 state assembly reps and half of our state senators, that suddenly in 2025, the legislature now has Democrats in control of the Assembly and the Senate. This is a bill that would pass. Because Evers is still in office. This bill would go to the governor and he would sign it. And he would be very proud of it because this fits his worldview. And the Democrats are saying to us again, this is what we're going to do. If we get those majorities, look out, this is where we're going.
Well, this is where else they're going. We're going to look at another set of bills, and this is Assembly Bill 77, and it has a companion in the Senate, Senate Bill number 734. And really, this would repeal lots of state statutes as it relates to those statutes that have been seeking to protect life.
This is what they want. What they're saying to us is, to be honest with you, where are they going first, though, to try to get this done? That's a rhetorical question. They're going to the courts. They're hoping our state Supreme Court will do this. But in case it doesn't happen, if we get those majorities in 2025, this is what we're going to do. We're going to undo the 24-hour notice. We're going to undo the 20-week abortion ban. We're going to undo the parental consent. We're going to undo the women's right to know. We're going to undo the requirement for an ultrasound. You go through the whole thing. That's what this bill does. And it is saying to us in very clear terms, if we get those majorities, this is where we go. And we will do this statutorily. So,
now, Julaine, somebody say, "Oh, you're just being, threatening with that statement." But look what's happened with the changeover, because you said the same thing. If we change the Supreme Court, the makeup of the court, what would be happening? And we are seeing that happen right now.
Well, we are. We knew that. Many of us tried to sound an alarm to say, okay, here's the difference between the candidates. Here's what happens if the court goes from 4-3 conservative to 4-3 liberal. Elections have consequences. Elections matter. Sometimes they're life and death consequences. We get an attack on our school choice. We get an attack on the legislative maps. The Dane County Court judge that had the case that was brought by Attorney General Josh Kaul after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe in June of 2022, that case has now been appealed by Sheboygan DA Joel Urmanski, who was a plaintiff in that case. It's being appealed to the appellate court right now. But Urmanski has said, to the Supreme Court, you should take this and let's just skip the appellate court because it's going to end up with you anyway. When that case gets up there, we're going to see exactly what the court thinks of life. You have Janet Protasewicz, who ran very publicly saying, I believe in women's reproductive rights, reproductive freedom. That's just euphemism. That's just code word for abortion. That's exactly what it's about. Right. So that's what we're going to see. And the Democrats are using this to the full extent.
There's another set of bills that talk about the other end of the life spectrum, and that is Assembly Bill 781 and Senate Bill 739. They have this new, nice, glowing term now called medical aid in dying, MAID bills. Doctor-assisted suicide is what it is.
Right, and often now we even drop the whole idea of medical or doctor says, we just call it assisted suicide, because there's some states that are saying a family member could do this and be exempt from any kind of prosecution. You know, I began in this organization in 1997. My first assignment was a public hearing in the state capitol. It was under renovation, so we were in I was actually, I think I was in the North Hearing Room. I remembered it. I was assigned to go over to a hearing, and you know what my hearing was on? Assisted suicide. Back then we called it PSA, physician-assisted suicide, PAS. And I was dumbfounded. And it wasn't the first time the bill had been introduced. For most of the years that I have been here through all these legislative sessions. Yeah, and Black, can't remember his first name, but Spencer Black, and Frank Boyle. But this bill has been introduced in one form or another basically every session that I've been doing this work. And this is an opportunity to remind people that this is another one of those bills that right now it's dead on arrival, okay? Because the Assembly's not going to deal with it, the Senate's not going to deal with it. But this is a bill that they would love to get out there. But I want to refer to one other bill that is related to it. There was a bill that just had a hearing last week on a palliative care council, and it's Assembly Bill 736. A number of the pro-life groups were neutral, but a couple of others were against it. And that's because the wording in that palliative care, palliative meaning pain control, how we do that, was too squishy. And it looked like it could open the door for some kind of assisted suicide maneuver. So words have meaning, and the way we word legislation. So those kinds of things are both out there, this assisted suicide bill. And by the way, almost every time that this is introduced, they pick up a few, but there's not a single Republican on the co-sponsors. So we heard that there is one Republican who has publicly said that this person would be very much in favor of this type of bill, but didn't put a name on here. So very important.
17 names on here right now, and those early days, Julaine, we would see 3 names, and then 4, then 5, then 6, and now we're up this high as well. Just a couple more bills, and we'll give you an opportunity to call in here. And Julaine, one of the bills I'd like to talk about as well here tonight is one that deals with changing our state statutes to do away with man, woman, husband, wife, and all have gender-affirming language all throughout our state statutes. It's here composed in Senate Bill number 907.
So, Jim, just draw the viewer's attention to this. All those are statutes that would be affected. And if you turn the page, you'll see another full page, all these statutes, and then go one more page, another full page of statutes, and then a partial page of statutes. This bill is trying to completely obliterate God's creative order. That's really what it's doing. It's saying anything that is gender specific has to be reworded in our state statutes. It's wrong. It's harmful. Right now, it is dead on arrival in the state legislature. The Assembly's not going to take this up. The Senate's not going to take this up. They don't want to touch this. Okay? But this is the kind of thing you would see immediately introduced and passed and signed into law if the liberals take over our state legislature. And that is exactly what they're doing. Every reference, and by the way, the governor has already 2-3 years ago, during his first administration, he issued an executive order so that all of his executive agencies were to make any reference in a public or private statement or communication all gender neutral. So he did away with mother, father, son, daughter, aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather, sister, brother, all those things that give us identity, the right identity. He just did away with them, a stroke of a pen. And now that's what the Democrats have done here. And somebody's going to say, why are you ranking on the Democrats? The Republicans didn't author this bill. The Democrats authored it.
This was introduced, as you can see here, on January the 11th. I mean, this is just fresh legislation that was just introduced. And if you want to make your legislator aware of your position, you may contact the legislative hotline, 800-362-9472. That's 800 362-9472. Much more could be said about that. I'm looking at the clock, though, and I do want to get this in as well. And this is a proposed constitutional amendment, a Senate Joint Resolution number 97, that would eliminate our marriage amendment that we passed here in the state of Wisconsin. And we'll point this out because of the fact that, 2015, the Obergefell decision came out that brought about, and it's believed Obergefell is going to come crashing down. And if so, our marriage amendment is going to be upheld. And there are those who are wanting to make sure that is off the books for Wisconsin.
That's exactly why they did this. They want to make sure that it is gone. So now just remember, though, because this is a joint resolution, it would have to go to the people in the form of a vote in order to remove that. But first it has to be voted on and get majority votes in both the Senate and the Assembly. It's not going anywhere right now. Now, interestingly, if you look at the list of people that are on it right now, they are all Democrats. However, on last week, GOP Senator Mary Felskowski from way up north added her name to it. That's the first time we've had a Republican support this kind of thing. This is not the first time. My recollection is they did this last time too. They want to strike that marriage amendment that was passed in 2006 in the state with a 60-40 vote.
Yep. You'll remember that battle big time.
Well, exactly. This is kind of related to, in one sense, don't forget the 15-week abortion bill that Robin Vos is talking about.
Right.
You know, these are the kinds of things that they would like to push through. GOP has their babies and the Democrats have their babies on what they'd like to push through and get to the people for a vote. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're hedging their bet.
TheCenterSquare.com had a quote from Senator Tim Carpenter, who said this: "It's time to remove the graffiti from our state constitution by removing Article 13, Section 13. And I think it would be a great step to try and let people know that everyone is invited and welcomed here in the state of Wisconsin."
Everybody.
But he's calling our Constitution graffiti.
Remember earlier in the show I said that there was a time when officials were being sworn in and they would say, I won't support certain. Right after this amendment was put in place, Dane County local officials took an oath of office and said, we support the state's constitution except for Article 13, Section 13. Tim Carpenter, long time serving in our state legislature. It's not graffiti. It's not graffiti. It's a clear definition of God's plan and design for the institution of marriage. And here's the deal, Jim. It's good for everyone, whether they mock and blaspheme God or whether they are devout believers in God.
Yeah.
His good grace extends to all mankind in the form of a marriage between one man and one woman and the family that emanates from that marriage. And what they're saying is God made a mistake. He didn't do it right.
Friends, we've got so much more, but we'd like to give you opportunity as well to call in if you have a question or comment on any of these things, issues here tonight. Our number is 414-935-3030, 414-935-3030. Get in right away because time is short. You may also call toll-free 800-733-8830. That's 800-733-8830. If you would like to text in a comment, you may do so tonight on our text line, 414-437, make that 439-3585. That's 414-439-3585. Send in your text here this evening or give us a call here tonight on inFocus. These are some pretty heavy issues we're talking about, Julaine.
Well, they are. These are the examples that we talk about elections have consequences. These bills, good and bad, have been put in by the people that were elected in their respective districts. You were talking earlier about the people that we elect now come out of our culture. Excuse me, Jim. And what's happening is the bills are a reflection of where our culture is. So we are looking at bills that would take away all distinctive sexual, biological sex identity. So.
Friends, you're watching inFocus here tonight on TV 30. Again, 414-935-3030. Here's a text that came in saying, I work at a medical clinic, hospital for children. There have been many incidents where mothers smell of marijuana bring their son or their daughter in for an appointment. We're told that bringing up this issue would be judging them, even if the question the mother, if their son or daughter experiences secondhand smoke, there's so discouraging. As a healthcare worker, any suggestions?
I can't imagine how discouraging it is that you can't have the best interest of the child at heart as a medical provider when the parent is doing something that is known to be harmful to that child because you're afraid of hurting their feelings.
We want to prosecute parents for not using the right pronoun for their child.
Well, and we have a smoking thing that said, secondhand smoke is terrible, so we don't even allow that, right? Because it hurts people. But marijuana is okay when children are being presented by parents who are obviously smoking it. Law enforcement is starting to weigh in a little bit on this marijuana stuff, and we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
Oh yeah, you see some of these states, Oregon and Colorado. It's just gone off the charts. The incidence of impaired driving as a result, and in the emergency room visits, and so much more.
Psychosis, violence, all these things are happening, and your body doesn't say, "Oh, well, you're using it for medical purposes, so I'm not going to respond to it a certain way." Body doesn't know whether you're using it for recreational or medicinal purposes. And by the way, there are so many, there are studies that show that medical marijuana really has not been effective. And there are many other ways to provide pain relief than to use marijuana. The problem with this, Jim, is everybody knows someone who has used medical marijuana and they have been helped. And so we legislate off a knee-jerk reaction according to an anecdote or somebody we know who's been personally helped. And that's what we hear over and over and over again on this medical marijuana in particular.
414-935-3030 is our phone number. To text 414-439-3585. Kelly in Mayville, good evening. You're on the air.
I just have a question. I was wondering, does medical marijuana, them other forms, have THC in it, or what? Or
yeah, it does, Kelly. That's the component of marijuana that is necessary to bring about the pain relief that the user is looking for. So that's why I was mentioning earlier the marijuana that's grown today is a THC concentration in it is much, much higher than it was a number of years ago.
Yes, I'm against that then because, that's mind-altering drug there.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly. So, yeah, we haven't seen any research that says because it's in an edible or in an oil that it's somehow the THC is less concentrated.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And we also have states that have gone then to pass things like psychedelic mushrooms and other things. I think it's the state of Oregon. They're running into so many problems. They're now working to try and rescind that from taking place. They put it out for the people to vote, and sure, let's pass it. Well, and it's a literal nightmare.
If I ever thought about moving to the West Coast, I hope that I would have the good sense to say, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Because Oregon has legalized, number one, physician-assisted suicide. They were the first state, I believe, in the country to legalize it. And then they started legalizing marijuana for recreational and medicinal purposes. And then they went to hard stuff. And what was it, 2 years ago? I think they kind of threw the door open and legalized all of that. And now you're talking about the mushrooms and the rest of that. Oregon is notorious for taking these risks. And I think it is a risk. And I think you're going to see a fallout from it that will be unmistakable. We can make our choices, but we don't get to choose the consequences. There are going to be consequences. You can't mess around with these drugs like we're doing.
Right.
I mean, look at the problem we have with fentanyl. There are consequences to this. We're beginning to understand that a little bit more, but we keep playing with this stuff. And states like Oregon keep jumping out as a pace setter, if you will.
Right.
And other states look at it.
Yeah. We're going to go to the phone line now. We have Nancy calling from Sheboygan. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air.
I thought when Rebecca Clayfish was running for office that she said her father had medical marijuana, but it was like in a pill form.
I'm sorry, who did you say?
Rebecca Clayfish, when she was running for governor. I thought she said her father had gotten medical marijuana.
I'm not familiar with that. I've never heard Rebecca mention that to me personally. It may have been. Maybe it was at a time when it could get it from another state and did that. I don't know. That's people have creative ways for getting access to things like that.
We're not able to confirm that
We
situation.
can't confirm that or deny it either. But this approach that the Republicans are taking would open the door for. And I'm just going to reiterate. I just am dumbfounded that we think the state should be involved in dispensing this.
Thank you, Nancy. Let's go next to John in Kenosha. John, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. Earlier caller was talking about the THC in marijuana, and he was against it because it was a mind altering, and your guest agreed. So does that mean she's against alcohol?
Well, yes, personally, I don't drink. I don't need my mind altered in that direction. We all know that too much alcohol does alter. I was at a restaurant not too long ago where a couple of individuals had been there earlier, and they were flat out drunk, and their minds were altered. It was very obvious. They wouldn't have not conducted themselves like they were conducting themselves if they were not under the influence of alcohol. Alcohol acts like a drug.
John, we see the consequences of alcohol around us too. I mean, the highway deaths, the wrong way drivers, the abuse that's happening.
So you're against it just like you're against marijuana then, right?
Yeah, I am certainly against it,
Well,
yes.
We aren't prescribing marijuana.
So should we outlaw alcohol? I mean, you're for outlawing medical marijuana. And by the way,
It is already against the law. It's against federal law here too, John. It is against federal law, and many states have been in defiance of that federal law in their passing of this and through referendum. But this really goes back even to the federal government, that the DOJ should be prosecuting states that go this direction.
Yeah, we had a discussion about this today, what the federal law does and when it kicks in and when it doesn't kick in. And we think that the federal law kicks in, for instance, if someone gets apprehended for a federal offense and they find out they've been under the influence of marijuana, then they can also bring that charge. Because the DOJ hasn't done anything to any state that has legalized marijuana in any way, shape, or form. But I've also never heard anyone, maybe this has happened, but I don't know of anybody who actually has written a prescription for alcohol for medical purposes.
Thank you, John. We're out of time here on the broadcast here tonight, but indeed, we've not seen that take place, and certainly, the Bible warns as well that wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging, and whoever is deceived by therefore is not wise.
Right. No, and because we're opening ourselves up to mind alteration and behavior alteration.
We're killing brain cells, we're dulling one's senses, etc. So we're out of time here for the broadcast tonight. Thank you for your calls, your participation. By the way, to be in contact with Wisconsin Family Council, wifamilycouncil.org. Their number 1-888-378-7395. We have 30 seconds. You have newsletters and email alerts that you put out.
We do. You want to get those, you just jump on that website, and there's a pop-up that allows you to put your name and address in there, and we'll get you our information. We send out a couple emails each week and alerts as we need them for special things going on in the state legislature or about our events.
wifamilycouncil.org. Julaine, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And friends, thank you for joining us here on TV 30's inFocus program. We trust you'll have a very blessed good evening.